Classes in session.
How you doing? Welcome to Learn 16 classes in session. I love having teachers and principals in my podcast. I feel like I'm teaching people that are just a little bit higher than me. I like it. Welcome, Dr. Z. You are an amazing TikToker who I saw your let's say impersonations of the soul of the elementary system so well played out, and it made me and to be honest, I was inundated with your TikToks. Like people just kept sending them to me.
Yeah.
So today we're going to get together because let's be honest, we're going to fix the education system. We got 45
Yes. Awesome. Let's do it.
45 minutes to fix it. I think that should be enough. And then we'll just send this podcast off to Trudeau, off to Biden,
Yeah.
and that should be that.
Problem solved. Yeah.
Tomorrow we'll do the Middle East. Okay.
Oh, I'd love that. All right.
If we're going to solve stuff. All right. So why don't you tell the people who are listening or watching who you are, how you got here?
Yeah. So my name is Katherine Zeisner. I'm from London, Ontario, Canada. I grew up in Canada and proud daughter of Robert and Sharon Zeisner. I went into education because my parents really wanted me to. They felt at a young age, man, you're going to be a teacher. It's a great life. My dad was a high school teacher for a long time before moving into higher ed, and my mom taught ESL. Went to the University of Maine, got my teacher education, came back to Canada and worked for many years in a variety of classrooms. In Canada, we say elementary, meaning K through 8. Here, where I am sitting currently, I'm currently sitting in Spokane, Washington, on the grounds of the beautiful Gonzaga University. And I was teaching for a long time, grade 7. I was a spec ed teacher. I actually worked for the Ministry of Education. I was seconded to the Amethyst School to work with their students with ADHD and diverse learners. I loved it. I highly recommend an opportunity for anybody because you take those experiences and bring them back to your school.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And then had an opportunity to move into administration as a vice principal. And then I'm from the Thames Valley District School Board, and they had this wonderful position called learning supervisor. And in particular, in their district office, someone who supported all the professional development for the whole district. And I got to do that for 3 years, loved it, really learned about appreciating all those who work in education, not just teachers, but providing professional development for our paraprofessionals, our EAs, our secretaries, our custodians. Then got a chance to be an administrator at, I think, 4 different schools. And throughout that time, I got my doctorate of education from Western University in London. Really, me too. Really diving into adversity, educational leadership adversity, and the tough things that schools and leaders have to overcome. Certainly chronic adversity and crisis adversity. And then more importantly, what are the resiliency strategies that great leaders use to get through those very difficult, challenging times, death of a student, financial crisis, community upheaval.
Right.
And that allowed me for Western to come and give me a little tap and say, would you like to come and adjunct for us at night working with our BEd students? And I jumped at the chance, something I always wanted to do. And so I was a principal during the day, and then Tuesday, Thursday nights would drive across town to Western for 800 undergrads.
Oh, geez.
All K through 12, focusing on classroom management.
Right.
But then we all realized we hate that term because you don't manage, really, it's about being supportive. So the second year I taught it, we changed it to creating positive learning environments. And I got to do it for a full year. And both, of course, incredible opportunities. And that got me excited to want to teach in higher ed full time. Right. And Gonzaga was a fantastic opportunity. So now for the last 3 years, I've been sitting here on their campus, teaching in their School of Ed, working with their master's and graduate in their graduate programs,
right,
making principles now and helping people get their doctorate and really changing education. But the reason why I wanted to meet with you, Joanne, is I think you and I are coming at this from the exact same perspective, which is let's tell the truth. Let's shine a spotlight on stuff that's the truth. Let's see who we can help influence and show the influence that educators can have. Let's compare districts and schools and programs and countries, and let's have some uncomfortable conversations
I'm
And
ready.
so, yeah, when you called me and I watch your videos all the time, I'm like, I love it. She's making me feel uncomfortable
I
because
like
she's
it.
talking about things that need to be talked about.
Absolutely.
And I just know that you and I together could really help people to see how they can help change education for the better, which in fact then changes our countries.
Absolutely. 100%. You said about 17 things in that introduction, and now we're going to need to break this up into 17 separate podcasts. It's like,
I'm old. I'm old. I'm
I've been
53
taking
years old.
notes. I should have been taking notes because at the end of the day, you tapped into, and this might need to be two parts. I mean, maybe fixing education in 45 minutes was a high bar. Maybe an hour and a half, maybe.
Okay. All right.
But let's start one place because so your education and all of your experience, and I think I haven't done a lot on curriculum development, and I know you're in the States now, but the way curriculum development works, and I don't, you can talk if you know about the States, I'll talk about it in Canada. So individual provinces get to develop the curriculum and the courses that are available to students. So they get to say what you're taking, what you have to take, what you can choose to take, and then they develop a curriculum, which nobody wants to look at those documents because they give everybody a headache. But then they develop a curriculum guideline about what you're supposed to teach. And I talk about this all the time because nobody speaks to this. What insane power that is for our government to have. And I say to my students, it's not so much about what they're telling us to teach, because I don't think the government's there rubbing their hands together, except for maybe Jason Kenney. I'm not going to talk about that. Rubbing their hands together, let's mess up students. I'm more concerned with what they haven't included.
Correct.
So I'm constantly like, my courses, do I cover the curriculum? Of course, but and again, please don't go look at curriculum, but I could do the curriculum in a week because it doesn't say how long, it doesn't say how in depth, it doesn't say anything. So I go, and most teachers go way past that.
Hmm.
But what they don't talk about or what they don't put in a course, for example, and then maybe you can give us some examples from where you're from. Up until about 6 years ago, we didn't talk about Indigenous issues.
That's right.
Residential schools were like a little byline at the side of the book that said, oh, we had residential schools, we helped them assimilate. Now, I've been teaching about residential schools forever, but that maybe 7 years ago, that is brand new that nobody my age knew about that,
So
right?
unpack that. Why is that? Why is that one of the many, many, many topics, ideas, themes, critical knowledge that's been
Mhm.
lacking? Why?
Well, it's simple. It's like the government doesn't want to have a hard conversation either. Because as soon as they mandate that, but I'll go you one step further. The people that are in the government in charge of curriculum don't know either.
There you
Because for
go.
the most part, they look like me,
Yeah.
for the most part, we're white, Christian background, relatively affluent. They weren't taught it either. And they think, well, the Civil War and the War of 1812, and these are the real things of our history, because that's what I learned. So some of it's not, I think some of it could be purposeful. But I think the worst kind of faulty education doesn't come from purposeful anger or malicious intent. It comes from flat ignorance, right? And we give
They
so much
don't.
power to our government, right?
Yeah, they don't have the right people in the room.
Exactly.
It's this
Exactly.
idea of this idea of sameness,
Hmm.
or let's have all my friends sit around and talk. And again, you and I continue to talk about what's uncomfortable is getting people who are not like you in the same room to share their experiences, perspectives, ideas. And
Hmm.
Abraham Lincoln's the only guy that I've ever known that did that. His entire life was, I don't like that guy, I need to get to know him better. And he purposely
Yeah.
surrounded himself with people who had completely different ideas than him so
Hmm.
that he did enrich the world. But you do not hear about that very often, even in
No.
schools when you have committees. It's the same people. It's the same people who want to be leaders. And in
Hmm.
fact, you need to be going to the quiet people. You need to be going to
Absolutely.
those people, the green thinkers, the people who, the green, gold, blue, and orange. You need everybody's perspective, and students and parents. It's the fact that we don't get the right people in the room.
And so I think that problem is twofold. Is it number one? I think a lot of people don't think that they need them. Why? And I talk a lot about Indigenous issues. I'm not Indigenous. I'm sure, look, there's lots of people like, I did genealogy.com. I am whatever. Look, I have no background, no familial connection, but I speak about it all the time. And the more that I speak about it, the more that I realize I need those people. I got to stop speaking. So, what I've learned recently, very recently actually, is what it means to be an actual ally, as opposed to, because I love to talk, and I love to talk when people are being morons. I love to put them in their place. But what a real ally means is when you have space, which is why I want to do this and I want to have as much diversity as I possibly can. When you have space or when you have a voice, do you clear space for the people that would be quiet or silenced otherwise? Right? I want to do a huge thing on transgendered athletes. That's not my space. It's not my space, but I want to have, so I got to find the right people in order to bring them and give them that ability, and so that we can have that dialogue, right?
But that's scary to a lot of people
Sure. Why do you think?
because you're letting control go.
Oh yeah.
I'm letting
I do
control go.
too.
I can't control what they're going to say and do.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for people, leaders, anybody, to
Hmm.
allow for that loss of control. And it shouldn't be about power and control, but that's how you perceive it, as opposed to, I don't need to teach this. I just
Hmm.
need to facilitate the learning of this. And I'm
Right.
going to facilitate the learning of this situation by having the right people in the room.
And there's the right leader. I know we're going to talk about politics and a whole other thing, right? Because there's the actual leader. A leader doesn't stand up and just tell you what to do. A leader has listened, a leader has made space, a leader has, uh, I used to ask my students all the time, we talk about democracy and we talk about who gets to vote. And a lot of my 17-year-olds are real mad that they
Yeah.
don't get to vote. They're like, Joanna, I know so much more than my mom does. Do you know she doesn't even know who leads the Green Party? Or they
Yeah.
call their parents out all the time. And I say, yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you're the one that's getting educated. But I joke with them. I say, listen, if you want to vote, though, you get all the big person responsibilities too. So if you do something wrong, you don't get young jail, you get big boy jail.
That's right.
We joke. Or
And you're paying taxes.
and you pay taxes, and if there's conscription, off you go. Like you get the whole body, right?
Right.
But how do you think? So then we're going to start throwing out words like affirmative action,
Yes.
right? Which everybody thinks is a four-letter word. How do you feel about affirmative action?
Well, here in America, they've had so many initiatives. Same thing, No Child Left Behind,
Oh,
every
let's
every
talk about
every Student Success Act.
oh, ridiculous.
It's interesting. It's the curriculum. I often, Joanna, send people to the Ontario Ministry of Education website to at least look at the documents to understand how equity can be given for
Mhm.
schools
Right,
because every classroom has access to the same guides. In
right.
America, they have something called Common Core, which is a
Okay,
very small document really about math and reading, etc.
okay.
But their curriculum comes from resources they buy. So
Whoa,
we as a school say, we're going to buy this grade 7 textbook.
right.
That's our history curriculum. Couple problems I have with that. Somebody's
Oh,
making a
so
lot.
one question. So that depends on the school?
Yes.
So there's not even like a state board or a county board. So every single school buys
Yep.
a book,
Yep.
and that's their, how
Yep. It's
on
worse.
earth?
It's worse. It's worse. Every classroom. So you and I are both teaching grade 7
Stop
and we
it.
don't get along and we're not collaborative. And I really like this book. I buy it and teach it. And you buy this one and teach it. So
Wow.
let's unpack that for a second. We have a
Wow.
set of twins. I have the one twin and you have the
Yeah.
other twin. They're getting a completely different grade 7 experience because what I would like to teach and what I bought and use is what I'm doing. And what you like and want to teach is what you use. So I say this to people all the time. The best part about Ontario is if you are someone who has to move and you're living in Sudbury, Ontario, and you got kids in the 5th grade, and
Right.
they moved to London, Ontario, same experience. The curriculum is the same, the
Yeah.
information's the same, the expectations are the same.
Right.
How it's taught is where the creativity and the passion of the teacher comes from.
Yeah.
So
Well,
guess what teachers spend over 50% of their time doing here?
picking a book.
Re- Researching stuff to buy to use. As opposed to, I say, go to the Ontario curriculum, print the grade 5
Yeah.
social studies document, and there's some topics and ideas and vocabulary and assessments you can use and
Right.
share it with your colleagues.
Yeah.
And then go and find some small little things which support those ideas.
You know,
It's
it's
completely backwards.
it's hilarious that that's the way. I had no idea because
Yes.
I have just started talking about. I would love to forget provincialize the curriculum. I want to nationalize a curriculum, and even better, I'm going to go one step further. I want to shove it into our constitution.
Yeah.
I want to say that you need representation from all provinces. Diversity and equity abounds. You create a curriculum that does the best it possibly can at encapsulating everything, so no premier can step in and decide, by the way, like Doug Ford has just decided in Ontario, we want to go back to 1998 curriculum for health studies, for the
Right.
love of God, because
Right.
we're too uncomfortable to talk about the other stuff. So nobody can do that. That's what I'm like, that's what I want. I don't, and the United States has taken it the other, of course they have. Of course they have. But they have taken it the other way.
Well, it's that sense, again, it's what I have experienced here is people's sense of wanting control and power and independence.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. But is that fair to your students?
Yeah.
And in
No.
Ontario, here's the documents. And where your creativity and independence and power and control comes from is, are you someone who likes to do a different type of assessment? Are you someone who likes to integrate subjects together?
Right.
Here they can't do that because we're spending $75 on each textbook for that grade 7 history program. I'm
Right.
expecting you to do page 1 through 130 plus the unit tests, and I need it done in 6 months, and you have to show it to me. And so the tears, the frustration, the anger that I get from teachers about someone died in my class and I'm still expected to do page 79 today.
Yeah. Right.
I have 6 kids who just came from Guatemala who don't speak English, but they're expected to do page 76 today.
Right.
Um, this,
There's no
this,
flexibility. There's no room.
and so it breaks my heart because the best part about being a teacher is an aha moment, is a teachable
Yeah.
moment, is something happens socially and we're spending the whole week on it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I will integrate it, and they still will get the history curriculum, but they're
Yeah.
going to get it through conversation and through some drama and maybe through some videos and maybe through some mind maps. But you're also expecting that everybody can read page 76.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
and so that's some I am very proud of the Ontario Ministry of Education's website and the resources available. It's also transparent, Joanna. So I'm a
Right.
mom and I want to know what my kid's getting. I could download the grade 7 history curriculum.
Yeah.
Here, nobody knows what it is. There's
Right.
some standards and there's some expectations, but not as thorough as ours.
Who
To
comes up with the core that you said?
the government,
The
Common
federal
Core is
government?
the federal government. It's like a huge mandate across America.
Okay. And what's in that then? You said math and science.
Yeah, math and reading. It's very math and English. Very basic expectations for certain ages and grades. Great start, but again, Alabama says, "Don't tell us what our grade
Oh.
5 should be doing," and Alaska says, "Don't you tell us that we should be doing what Alabama's grade 5 students are doing."
Oh
And
no.
so the number one thing that I've noticed, and I'm trying so hard to get people to just at least think about, is let's just think about the kids.
Yeah.
A grade 5 kid sitting in Alabama who's what, 11, is very similar to the grade 5 kid sitting in Alaska who's also
Sure.
11. Sure, they
Yeah.
have different hobbies and experiences and stuff, but they're still an 11-year-old kid.
Absolutely.
And so I often will say, tell me how this is right for kids.
Right.
And I'm just proud of the equity access that Ontario allows.
Right.
And
Right.
that
Even.
if you are someone who moves, you're going to get the same stuff. Maybe not
Mhm.
the same way, but the other thing here is you don't have to, in Ontario, if a child walks into your school and they're 11, we place them by age, not by parent suggestion.
Right.
Here, you walk into a school and your parent says, well, they were in grade 4 in Alabama. I'd like them in grade 4 here. And you're like, but they're 11. Yep, but I want them in grade 4. And this idea of redshirting, they hold their kid back for a year so they're taller, stronger, bigger, more mature than some of the other kids. Don't get me wrong, great idea. It's awesome.
Mhm.
But is that what's right for the child? In some cases, yes. Keeping
Yeah.
some kids back, and we don't really keep kids back in Ontario because we often look at the reasons why. Right? There's a
I want
learning
to talk about
disability.
that. I want to
Yeah,
talk about that with you
yeah,
specifically because the notion of failing, the notion of and when we talk about it from an elementary, so a K through 8 versus a high school experience, I don't know if we're going to come on the same page here or not because there I've never taught element. So I've taught as young as grade 6.
right.
Um, but even if you think about child development, right? Even if you think about like my friend's kid learned to speak way late. Way
Yes,
late,
very common. Very
like
common.
a year late, right? And she was freaking out and whatever. And he might be slower on the take. And you know what? Holding him back might make sense for him. Yet it's like we don't hold anybody back. Why? It's going to break them. Is it going to break them? Or is our perception and our social damnation of it going to break them rather than just, because there's lots of kids who just don't get math yet, who just, who can't, maybe their fine motor skills aren't up to par yet. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep pushing them and pushing them through. And for me, that's an economic decision. That is not what's good for my kid decision, right?
So you've answered your own question. The answer is it depends. It
Yeah,
depends on the child
100%.
because we have had kids with medical, serious chronic illness who have not been to school for a year.
There it is.
Often the conversation is around social, that holding someone back or failing them or the word is retaining them in elementary,
There you go.
is
Yeah,
that it's going to hurt them socially.
right.
And my answer to that is it depends. Because there's some kids whose maturity level truly is that of younger people.
Hmm.
They have their friends are younger people. Their size is similar to others.
Yeah,
So I have never been part of retaining anyone that's gone through, but I
right,
have been part of the conversations. In
right.
Ontario, we sit around and it's a huge group of people. It's the parents, it's an advocate, it's a social worker, it's a psychologist, it's the administration, it's teachers. And it is about what's best for the child.
Hmm.
High school is different.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah, because if you didn't do the work, if you're unable to do the work, if you have not done the assessments and passed them,
Or have
and
chosen not to, not
yeah,
because
yeah,
some kids
you,
are
yeah,
like,
yeah,
nah,
then you're
right?
not going to, then it's not that you failed. You don't get that credit, and you need your
Yeah.
credits to leave high school. So it's about you didn't obtain the credit.
Hmm.
So elementary, and so in America, one of the things that I do appreciate is they have elementary, middle, and high. So they have these sort of K-5 schools,
Hmm.
these 6, 7, and 8 schools, and then the 9 to 12 schools, and different versions of that. Some of them are K-3, some of them are 7, 8, 9, and
Right.
so socially, they're packed together, and not everybody knows what's going on in everybody else's life. Whereas in Ontario, often we stay at the same school for a long period of time, and
Right.
everybody knows your business. So if you retain somebody, everybody knows. Well, you
Hmm.
used to be in my class, and now you're not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Preserving the the respect for that child and that family and their business is a little harder.
Right. Yeah, that
I
is
didn't
difficult.
get math. I didn't get math till I was in grade 11. I didn't figure it out till I was in grade 11. And I did not get my grade 9 math credit.
Right.
And I did not do well in grade 7. I show people my report card all the time. All my
Right.
marks were below. But if they had kept me back, it would have devastated me personally.
Right.
Just the embarrassment, the shame to my family. Um, and I was also this tall and this big in grade 7. Like, it wasn't like I
Very
fit
cool.
in with the grade 6s.
How tall are you?
Well, 5'10".
Oh, okay. That was a
Um, yeah, it's real. I was a tall kid, tall,
right.
skinny, awkward kid. Um, it would have hurt me socially. So I would have hoped that there would have, obviously we just kept me going, and eventually my brain popped in the
Hmm.
11th grade. But I didn't know I had ADD either.
There you
So
go.
it wasn't talked about then, right?
None of us did,
Yeah,
right? None of us
yeah.
knew any of that. None of we, and I often think it is about how we frame it and how we push it. Because I'll tell you what, every kid in my school, anyways, and a lot of kids will talk about their IEPs openly.
Yes.
It's all confidential. I think it's the guidance office gives you this folder of kids and all their IEPs, and they're like, "Don't show any kids." I'm like, "Are you joking?" They walk into my classroom and go, "Joanna, my IEP says,"
That's right.
they're I mean, proud is a weird word, but they're comfortable with it. It's just who I am.
It's
And
called self-advocating. And
right.
I talk about this all the time on my lives and in my videos. The
Mhm.
number one thing you want as a parent is your kid to self-advocate for their needs. So
Absolutely.
you can feel that if they're stuck on the side of the road, they can do something about it. If they're at school and they didn't get the technology they needed to write the test, they can ask for it. And
Mhm.
as parents, that's the skill that you need to be developing in your child, no matter the age, no matter the situation, is that they can talk to adults and advocate for their needs.
Absolutely.
Whether I need to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water.
Yeah. No, for
And
sure.
when I see parents talking for their child, drives me nuts. And as a principal,
Mhm.
they used to sit in my office and the parent would go, "He's bullied." Oh, and then I would turn to the child and go, "Tell me what's happening." He says, "Just a second. I'm just going to ask your child for some specifics. Tell me about when
Mhm.
this happened. It happened in the morning." The damage that that does to people, you see it as adults.
Mhm. You
And
really do.
so I love it when kids walk in and say, "My IP says that I get headphones and I get technology and I get extra time. And, you have to do an oral test with me." Awesome, buddy. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Confidence, success, knowing their needs, understanding the process that got them to be successful.
Mhm.
I love that. There should not be any shame or embarrassment about an IEP. Remember, an IEP can be because you have a hearing disability or
Well,
a
it could be for
visual
anything.
impairment.
And I honestly believe that if I think we're about the same age. If we were tested when we were kids, if every
Oh,
kid got tested, we would all have one. We
I
literally
should have been on an IEP.
every student would have. I think I might have been dyslexic. Like
Oh, my dad and I talk about that all the time.
I honestly believe so because I hated reading as a kid,
Yeah.
and even as a teacher, like as I became a teacher, kids would say, "Joanna, can you spell that word?" And I'd hate it. My first few years, I'd start to sweat. I'd have to look at the word, and I swear to God, I would have to focus all my attention on looking at that word and spelling it out to that student. And eventually I got better. I'm like, did I just fix or help, correct a thing I didn't even know I had? It
Yeah,
obviously wasn't impairing, but
ours is dysgraphia, the flipping of numbers,
oh
and
wow.
not just left and right, but up and down. Um,
No way, math must have been impossible.
It was impossible. I can remember when we used to do those bubble tests growing up a couple times a year,
The
and
scan
it was several days of stuff. They never explained what it was like we do with EQAO now.
right,
Um, and there was a spelling aspect. It's going to be 50 words, and the very first word was done.
right.
I couldn't spell done for whatever reason, and I
Wow.
didn't put any other words down. And I was going done, and I always rhymed done, sun, bun, and I
Oh,
couldn't get there.
wow.
0 out of 50. 0 out of 50.
Oh,
And to this day, DONE, I know what it is now. But I'm not stupid.
right,
And I'm not saying because I have a doctorate of educational leadership that I'm brilliant, because that's not
right.
what I am. What I have done in my life is taken opportunities. So I've taken the opportunity to get a tutor. I've taken the opportunity
There
to
it
go
is.
and see a professor after a test. I've taken the opportunity to not go out on the weekend and to do some extra work. I've taken the opportunity to take an extra year to get my studies.
There it is.
No shame in that.
No, and you know what? And that's to me. So like I work at an academic school. So it's a small private school and we offer academic courses. So for those who are from the States, I don't know how it works down there, but you need to take certain courses to go to university stream, college stream, or workplace. We don't offer we have some university college courses that are both, but we don't offer the other courses because we're a small school and predominantly kids are going to university from our school, which is fine. I we spend a lot of time talking about accommodation versus modification, right?
Yes.
And I've very much said I am all for accommodation. I hate modification. And I'm very clear about this because so just to explain it a little bit, let's say you brought up oral testing, right?
Yeah.
Let's say a
Yeah.
kid to write out a test, he or she reads my test, but writing it out takes forever, or they're missing a connectivity point there and they can't get the words on paper and they fail the test. But if I were to ask them in person, they could go for about 30 minutes on a 5 mark question because that's how much they have in their head. That's an accommodation.
That's right.
And I'm good with that. I'm good with making every single accommodation I can make to ensure that I am getting the intelligence and the work and the thought process out of my student. But an accommodation would be, oh, it takes you a long time to do the test. Forget it. You know what? I'm just going to give you half the questions. No. For me, I don't see that as educating, right? Because that kid can still do that full test. And that's the curriculum, that's the expectation. I think when we undervalue expectations, when we minimize expectations in order, by the way, to allow that kid to pass, which is in essence what we're doing, what kind of education are they getting? And then what am I
Yeah.
preparing them for? You know?
They don't have that kind of stuff here. I do
Mhm.
appreciate the difference between an accommodation and modification, and I always say to people, can the child access the grade level curriculum?
Mhm.
Can the child do exactly what's expected of a grade 7 history student?
Right.
Yes or no? No. Then they need a modification. Then they should be accessing the grade 6 curriculum or the
Yeah.
grade 5 curriculum. Can't That's modifying. You're modifying the curriculum expectations to a
Right.
different grade. And it could be up in some cases too. We've got
Mhm.
some students who are unbelievably gifted who need to
Right.
access higher grade. Accommodation is what are the small things you do in your classroom to make them successful at grade level?
Oh, that's
Do they need,
interesting.
do they need preferred seating? Do
Yeah.
they need extra time? Do they need someone to scribe for them?
Right.
But they're still able to do the grade level content
Okay.
with a
Yeah.
few tricks and trades. And
Right. Right. Right.
so that's something that's different here. They don't
Right.
necessarily have a huge distinction. They have IEPs and they have behavior plans and very similar, but I often will say, are they able to do the grade curriculum?
Mhm.
But again, it goes back to our very first piece. They don't have very good curriculum.
They don't have any. What do you mean they don't have
So
good curriculum?
yeah, so it's very difficult for someone to and these books that they're using uh, are difficult even for someone who could access the curriculum. Because think about it. What's the one thing as a history teacher that kids need to know to be successful in history? How to look at visual text and how to read a textbook, how to understand what something in
Discern.
italics is, what means if a word is bolded. When you look at a photo and there's a little thing underneath it, a citation, what does that mean? Someone has to teach them how to do that.
Mhm.
And so if you don't have curriculum that builds upon skills from the grades before, by the time they get to you, they're going to struggle accessing your curriculum because they
Absolutely.
don't have the skills needed. And let's be honest, grade schools, everybody teaches those skills all the time. Once they get to high school, we shouldn't not be teaching reading.
Right.
It's just a different type of reading. How do you read
Yes.
a blog, right? How
Yep.
do you read an online article? But it's that the continuum. I just love this word that in Ontario, the curriculum is a continuum of skills.
Mhm.
This is what grade ones do and can do and should do and probably could. This is what
Right.
twos do. Here it's all over the place. If I visit schools on Fridays, I go and visit 2 to 3 schools,
Right.
and I often will try and go into the same classroom and it's completely different. So I'm sitting here in a grade 7 language classroom and they're reading some sort of novel, whole class novel. You know, half those kids can't read it, but it's a read aloud, so that's lovely. I appreciate that. And then I go to the next room and they're doing a worksheet, fill in the blank, Mad Lib kind of stuff. They haven't read a book this year. They watch CNN 10 every morning to access the news and have conversations about it. Okay, that's tough. Then you go to the next one and they're reading graphic texts and making their own and sharing them with younger students. So which classroom's right? Which classroom's best? You
Who
can't
knows?
compare. You can't compare.
They're not even.
So
They're not even.
as an administrator, it's very difficult for me to do teacher performance appraisals to know if they're actually providing for their students. Everything begins with that curriculum piece.
Uh,
Everything begins with that curriculum piece. And I really often say, go to the Ontario, see what they're doing. I'm not saying the curriculum is all right, because
you don't
that's
send them to our health curriculum.
no, oh, I say that all the time. But the essence of what a province-wide, a statewide curriculum could be, along with those guides, right? The guides for effective instruction, the guides for
Mhm.
assessment. Like I talk about all the time, diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment, and they go, "What?
Right, right, right.
Assessment for of and as learning? What? Is that just memorizing? No." So
I,
there's a lot.
I have a question for you. I work again. I work at a private school, so we follow the Ontario curriculum. We follow, there's two things I don't like. I wonder if you're going to be on the same page. A, I hate a rubric. In my core, I hate a rubric, and I'm going to
Mhm.
explain why. Number one, and number two, in Ontario, they have recently, well, maybe in the last five or so years, said you don't take off late marks anymore because you're not grading their work, you're grading their. I don't like either of them. And here's why. So, a rubric to me, just so everybody at home kind of has a visual, a rubric gives a scale of what's required to do well on an assignment, all the way down to what's the basic minimum you can do to pass an assignment. And if it's an essay, there's little descriptions in boxes, maybe like how many citations you need or what kind of analysis you need or whatever. And you hand this to the student so they know, okay, here are my expectations. Two problems with it. Number one, I hate giving minimum expect. No, I don't want to tell the kid what it is just to pass. That's the worst thing you can do in high school. Oh, look, you can just do this to pass. I'm on side with that. Number two, and this is what I think every teacher, I had a master's professor one time say, you guys can hand in your essays as much as you want. The whole class went, huh? By my master's, right? We went, what is she talking about? She goes, this is my job. I've written 6 books. Do you know how many times I hand them into the editor and
Mhm.
then I get something back, or I have a coworker read it or whatever? She goes, that's how you learn. You don't learn by you handing in a paper, me giving you a 72 with comments, because you know what? You're never going to come back to that. So for me, now I work in a private school. So before the public school, teachers get all mad at me. I don't have 35, 40 kids in my class. So I tell each one of my students, I'm not giving you a rubric. And I've told the ministry people, I ain't doing it.
Hmm.
And here's what, and I tell them what I do. I said, because that's where learning happens. And that's the only place learning happens is giving it a go, maybe not being great, and then giving it another go, and then giving it another go. I have kids hand in stuff, and I'm like, shoot, this would be 100 at this grade level. And I give them about 50 comments, and they take it away. They're like, Joanna, was this not good? I said, listen, if you're writing at a grade 10 level, I want you writing at a grade 11 level. Why would I stunt where you are? Right? So I'll let you. What do you think about that or about rubrics? And then I'll go to my late mark issue.
So the only reason why I appreciate seeing a rubric is because I like the sense of that the expectations have been shared with the students in some sort of format.
Okay.
Before we had rubrics, people would just say, write a 5-paragraph essay, make sure your
Oh,
sentences look like this. What rubrics has
yeah.
forced teachers to do is to be more transparent about what they expect. The other
Okay.
thing a rubric does and has done is really helped parents
Hmm.
understand how kids achieve and achieve better. Because
Okay.
what a rubric does is it says you did a few, you did some, you did a lot, you did a ton. And
Right.
then defining what a few some it looks like. And because parents go, this is really good. And I'm like, yes, but it's still the minimum of what's
Mhm.
expected. And
Right.
to get parents to understand what it takes to do more. So
Right.
to me,
I got you.
it's a tool
Hmm.
to make teachers be clearer, to be fair and transparent, and to teach teachers, to teach
Hmm.
parents. What I do, because I'm teaching graduate school,
Hmm.
again, very hard to assess these people who are outstanding.
Right.
I don't put due dates. I put all this, everything's due the day marks are due to the university,
Oh, wow.
because some people take a little bit longer than others to do things.
Hmm.
And the due date doesn't allow them to achieve as well as they could. It's very stressful, anxiety driven.
Right.
But this is when things should be done. Like if you've got 4 assignments in a 4 month course, I would expect one each month, but I need everything by December 12th. So it works for both people who need time and people who need the anxiety reduced. And then, like you, it's alliterations, reiterations. So here it's back again. Do you want to make changes? And this
Right.
is how to get better. And it
Right.
goes back and forth 1,000 times until it's at its best. So you and I are on the same page about their annoyances, but I'm looking at them more from a practical perspective and a tool to assist us as teachers to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Because often parents will come in, families will come in and argue, and kids in your age will argue about why didn't I get this? And it's just a nice tool to say, I asked for 7 citations and you only put 5. So this section's a little lower, but I'm going to give it back to you. And if you add a couple more, I can move you up.
Hmm.
So it's a protection teachable tool.
Right. Right.
Um, and then I love draft,
Yeah.
submit.
Yeah.
And to me, that's why I love diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment. These are all
Hmm.
diagnostic. I'm just trying to see where you're at. Now I'm going to teach some stuff and see where you're at. Now use all those skills and give me the summative.
Right. Right. Right.
That we will mark, and that I will give you clear expectations about, and that I'll let you work on a million times. So
Hmm.
we're on the same page when it comes to process.
So when it comes to that, so again, I don't like the no late marks thing, but here's how I handle late marks. Because I feel as though, and I get what you're saying, I get the anxiety, I get all of that, but I also get, look, the real world is going to have hard deadlines. So if I don't teach you how to handle some kind of anxiety, and by the way, any good teacher worth anything would have a kid come in and they say, listen, this just happened on the weekend, can I have an extension? That's different. When I talk about this, like my first day of class, all of my high school kids get an outline just like in university, so they know every single assignment with full description. They know their major project with full description. You could go home this weekend and get her done, or try to get it all done. And so I'm giving you that time, but I still feel there's value and weight in having a hard deadline you have to achieve, especially for high school kids. Because if I said to a high school kid, go ahead by December 12th, I'd have about 80% failing
Yeah.
because they don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Why you and I are on the same page with this is the fact that you and I believe in consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a tough cookie when it comes to consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do the crime, you do the time, respectfully.
Yeah.
Um, but you've said something that makes me really truly believe and respect you, which is on the first day of school, you're transparent and you give them all the stuff.
Absolutely.
Do you
They
know
know
how many
exactly.
people out there don't know what they're doing on Monday?
No, that's crazed. They should be
So
fired.
that is so frustrating because again, a parent comes to me and says, "Oh, there was a pop quiz. There was supposed to be a quiz, and the teacher didn't do a quiz." And I'm frustrated as a principal because I got parents upset because what the teacher's done is ridiculous, and they
Hmm.
are disorganized, and they're not transparent, and they're not available to answer questions, and things aren't in the Google Classroom.
Right.
We have to be very organized, transparent people. And if
Absolutely.
you are, Joanna, then I support whatever it is that you're doing. Is
Mm.
if you can say to me,
We're,
listen, they
we're
knew.
building a system for crappy teachers. That's awful. No wonder everybody's so mad at me all the time. I say teachers should get paid more, and they're like, especially a lot of people in the United States say, Joanna, but do you have any idea what goes on at my kid's school? And I'm like, well, those teachers shouldn't be teachers. I can't be building a system for crappy people. I'm going to build a system for greatness and hope it achieves. Also, with late marks, is I'll take off a few late marks, and then, and this is where kids really love me, and I say that facetiously. I give them another assignment
Yes,
and I make them stay with me and do it.
sounds
Because I'm like,
great.
listen, I'm not going to take 50% off your assignment because that's not what you're capable of, but you
That's
can't
right.
get away with it either. So here's what you got. I had this one student very recently. He has a lot of focus problem, and he's in grade 12, and it's still a big problem, and he's very upfront about it. And he goes, Joanna, listen, if I hand this one in late, can you just not take marks off because my mom's going to kill me or whatever? I said, listen, I'm going to make you a deal. You're right. I'm going to mark this straight up. But, but you're going to have to make it up to me and you're going to have to prove to me that you're willing to do extra work to make up for the extra time I gave you because then otherwise it's not equitable to the class.
And it's a real world consequence.
There you
If you're
go.
supposed to work a shift this weekend at Tim Hortons and you miss it or you're late, you don't think we're going to make you stay a little bit longer after?
There it is.
Well, what you're doing, I support 100%, which is real world consequences for the correct age group, which are high school kids and kids
Yeah.
getting prepared for college and
Different
university
situation.
and
Absolutely.
trade
Yeah.
schools. And the fact that that's exactly what would happen in a business sense,
Mhm.
right? Same with taxes. Okay, so you missed the tax deadline? It's not that you can't submit your taxes.
Because you're going to pay more.
You still have to submit your taxes.
Yeah.
So those are the conversations that I appreciate that age group teachers doing with their students.
Can't we just mandate this?
Joanne, I have to say it depends. We're talking about 3-year-olds to 21-year-olds.
No,
And
but for high school, for example, can't I put this in the high school curriculum? Here are my expectation of teachers, right? This is what my only problem with Ontario is you can't, a lot of the stuff I'm advocating for, doing it to 35 and 40 kids.
that is correct. The other problem is that
There's,
you're in a private school, so the
yeah,
working with a teachers union is a very different situation.
I don't
And I
have that.
support I support teacher unions. They have they have done some great things, some
Mhm.
professional development, support of their members, keeping people accountable. I support unions 100%. But you couldn't put that in a curriculum because curriculum isn't for a teacher, right?
Yeah, it
Curriculum is
would be
about
in a
learning. It's about learning. It's not about teaching.
contract. It would have to be negotiated.
Through a collective agreement situation with the union. And what is in Ontario right now is we don't take marks off for late.
I hate it.
Same with attendance. And again, you don't show up for your shift at Tim Hortons, you're not getting paid.
But here's the thing about attendance, and I say this to my kids all the time. They're like, because we have this thing in our school. Shh, don't tell anybody. But we'll say if you miss so many classes, you won't get the credit. That's a
Yes,
lot. It's a
I know,
flat
but
out,
that's the same in public schools too.
but it's
The
a lot. Because
again,
we're still going to give you the credit.
and it'll be 50. And I just said this the other day on one of my TikToks. If we truly understood why some, especially high school kids, don't come to school, your heart would break.
Well, exactly.
They're living on the streets. They're looking after their aged parents. They're working 3 jobs. Like there's some really good reasons why great kids don't come to school.
And
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 it's
here's the great thing.
not because they're lazy.
If I have a kid that doesn't need to sit in my class and learn and then just roll down in for the test dates and always email assignments and they get a 90.
It's
Well, there it
2021,
is.
Joanna. We have technology. We have
There
Google
it
Classroom
is.
or Microsoft Teams. We have Zoom recordings.
Yeah.
If they don't physically need to be there, the only
Mhm.
thing I would like them to come because I do love
Absolutely.
collaborative learning.
Yeah.
I love it when they're working with their peers. I do love oral presentations, but you can do that on Zoom too. And I do
Mhm.
love them to participate in the school environment, clubs,
Yeah.
games, activities. And I want a relationship with them. But
Yeah.
I'm sitting here 2 out of 2 years into a 3-year doctoral program with 15 doctoral students I've never met in person, and I've never had better relationships with people in my life.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it is possible to have relationships with people through technology. But as a high school kid, there's just so much enjoyment and energy that comes from a building.
100%.
But but you may have a kid of your own. You may be raising younger siblings. You may be working two jobs. You may have a chronic illness. All
Yeah.
of these things are wonderful opportunities for us to show how technology can allow for kids to be successful.
I had a kid
So
once who was brilliant in physics. That was his thing, physics and math. And I taught him American history. And this kid would sit in the back of my class, listen to my lecture, have his American history notes he would take, and then he would do physics homework, not for his class, for grade 12. And I used to get so mad at this kid, and I'd be like, I won't say his name, but I'd be like, "Hun, can you pay attention?" Or I'll ask him a question to catch him off guard, and he'd know it every single time. I'm like, how am I supposed to be mad? You
yeah,
are that smart
that's my
and
Matt.
or
That's my
that
Matt.
aware.
I had a
Find
kid
it.
named Matt who, when Harry Potter came out, when like the second one that was like this big, and it had a character named Madame Z in it, as that was my name, and when I
Right,
was
right, right.
teaching, all he did was read the entire day. At the back, row six, sixth seat, the thick thing, same
Yeah,
thing. Brilliant. Matt, can I have an answer? Give an answer.
yeah,
But again, this is about the fact that we need to know our kids. We
yeah.
need to recognize that some students don't have to have taking notes and looking at us to learn. That this is
Mhm.
about relationships with kids. This is about capabilities. And most importantly, that not every kid in a grade 12 class is identical, and don't
Yeah, exactly.
expect them to be. How
Absolutely.
people learn is fascinating, and not
Mhm.
everybody learns the same.
Absolutely.
And so, again, back to this idea of, can we focus more on learning than teaching? Can we
Mhm.
focus more on leading than managing?
Mhm.
Because when it comes to managing, or when it comes to the teaching piece, it's about you,
Mhm.
and we need it to be about the students.
And I think in order to do that, and sort of on a final note as we wrap up, but I think in order to do that, we can't fund a system, and I know I'm in the private system, but we cannot fund a public education system where we expect teachers, no matter what grade level, to teach 45 kids and do that effectively. It cannot be done in a healthy way. And we can't blame the kid and we can't blame the teacher. It is a funding organizational issue that we've decided, who cares, just shove a bunch of them in a class and they'll all get the same thing. But we're doing all of us a disservice, right? Because in that class could be the next kid that cures cancer or the next kid that writes the best Harry Potter book or God knows what. And we are stifling them, limiting them, failing them, or passing them without even thinking. But there's not a lot of educating. Huh?
And it's better than it was.
Yeah, of course.
When I first started like full-time teaching in 2000, that's 21 years ago. It's 10,000 times better than it was. The
Hmm.
flexibility, the knowledge, the sharing, the parent relationship. It's better than it was, which was straight rows,
Yeah,
tons
yeah,
of
yeah,
standardization. Uh, Everybody does exactly the same thing at the exact same time. Nobody talks to each other. It's better.
yeah,
The problem is, it's that tragically hit song. We're still, a century behind.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we could go to New Zealand, we can go to Finland, and we can go to some beautiful schools in Australia and steal some ideas, but it's not necessarily going to translate to where we are. It's
yeah.
about leadership and understanding your community, and being open to having voices around the table saying what will work for us. What
Absolutely.
will work for us? It goes right back full circle to what we talked about at the beginning. You need the right people at the room in the right time.
I love it. I love how we came full circle
I do too.
right at the end of the podcast. Now, where can people find your brilliance?
So I love Twitter. I'm a big Twitter fan.
All right.
And on Twitter, I am Principal Zed, and Zed spelled
All right.
Zed.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, which is C, and then my last name Zeisner, and then my TikTok is Dr. Zeisner. And those are my
Amazing.
three. I actually got rid of a whole bunch of social media recently. I got rid of my Facebook,
Right.
Snapchat, LinkedIn. It was overwhelming. It wasn't
So
providing the value that I wanted. Instagram's kind of my fun. Twitter is really my educational leadership stuff, and TikTok's where I'm trying to influence positively and bring joy to people. So
Amazing. And on that amazing note, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I think we send it off to Trudeau and Biden,
yeah.
you know, and apparently every single school in the United States, because they devise their own curriculum. I'm going to need a lot of emails, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, what you're going to get is you're going to say that that's not how it works where I am,
There you
and
go.
that's the problem. Wouldn't it be
Uh,
nice to know that if we moved from Alabama to Alaska, at least there would be some similarities? Anyway, I
Absolutely.
never got to congratulate you on your beautiful engagement. That made me
Oh,
cry.
thank you so much.
So,
She really
wow.
did surprise me to the point of almost running her over. So
Your
there is
mom
that.
was your mom, baseball. Like it just couldn't have been more
Everything.
beautiful.
And I said this to somebody the other day. I go, not only did she propose, and that's beautiful, but what she did is she made sure that every single thing that I loved was in the same space at one time. She doesn't care about baseball. She kept calling it a rink. That's not her deal. She's a skater, so that's not her deal. You know what I mean? Um, but
But think about
and
that. Think about that for a second. It's like a
yeah,
teacher. It's like a teacher.
she
She
knew.
knew that it needed to be about you and not her. And teachers need to recognize it has to be about, and every year you got 30 new little faces too, right? What you did
Mhm.
last year might not work this year.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you're, that's why I watched it. I thought, oh, she planned that down to the outfits that would make you happy.
yeah.
Yeah,
She really
that was, I've showed that I don't know how many times to people about, you want to know what true love and respect and kindness looks like?
did.
This is it right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and your mom. I lots of prayers to your mom.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, it was amazing. I'm going to have you back on another
Good,
time. So we've
awesome.
kind of fixed education a little bit, and I'll have you back on, and we'll give it another go. We'll just choose a different topic.
Whatever people want us to talk about, just ask them. What do they
There
want
we
us to
go.
talk about? We'll
You
just go
guys
for an
throw it in the
hour.
comments. Give us
Yeah,
a list,
yeah.
right? Middle
Yeah, what do they
East.
want to know our opinions on? And I think
We
this
got
was a good example that while you believe something that may be different from what I believe in, you and I still believe in the process. We still believe in
yeah,
the process of being accountable, the process of being transparent, the process of supporting student learning, and how you do it and how I do it's different. But it's still about supporting kids' success.
100%.
Perfect example.
And on that note, have a great day.
Cheers.
We'll see you soon. Dismissed.